Consider all the things that Karen had in her favor. CCTV confirmed that Karen and John were, in fact, lovey-dovey at the bars that night. Receipts from the bar showed that Karen was not overserved. The neighbors near 34 Fairview had cameras pointing toward the alleged incident, yet they were unwilling or unable to produce footage to establish guilt. The deputy chief of police even reviewed his footage and stated that nothing of significance was observed. Karen's phone connected with John's Wi-Fi, confirming that she was not even in the vicinity before John's phone took its final steps. Karen's calls throughout the night indicated genuine frustration, concern, and eventually panic. There is video footage of the actual collision in John's driveway that caused the damage to Karen's taillight. Witnesses, Carrie Roberts, Dighton Officer Barrows, indicated that the taillight was cracked, not obliterated. The unexpected recording of the 911 call confirmed Karen's genuine hysteria, shock, and her attempts to render life-saving aid. Officers on scene testified that she had blood on her face and in her hair from attempting mouth-to-mouth. A police cruiser dash cam filmed Karen's taillights in the driveway of One Meadows, and no obliteration was easily discernible. Alarm.com footage of Karen's car shows her taillight was intact at 4:12 p.m. when the Lexus was loaded onto the flatbed truck. Also, the Alarm.com footage of Karen's car showed the trigger events on key cycle 1162 occurred while the Lexus was being loaded onto the flatbed truck. The unadulterated Sallyport video and camera angles further confirm the taillight upon entry was in different condition than it was upon exit. Furthermore, John's injuries are not at all consistent with a motor vehicle strike. The medical examiner couldn't even provide a conclusory manner of death. Those 14 exculpatory details were available within the first few days of John O'Keefe's death. The FBI later verified that John and the Lexus did not collide, nor were his injuries caused by a motor vehicle strike. During the investigation, Karen cooperated despite the immense shock and grief that she was experiencing. There's no evidence that she attempted to evade the MSP. She made no effort to conceal her car. She didn't delete anything from her phone. She provided the state police with her car and phone voluntarily before they even had search warrants issued. She obeyed the stay-away orders even though it meant not attending the funeral of the man that she loved and had tried desperately to save. And that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of all the disturbing Brady violations and poor procedures in this investigation. How can anyone think that she caused the death of John O'Keefe? It's a mystery, a mystery. Today, receiving the outcome of the SJC to uphold Judge Cannoni's verdict, that's a gut punch for everyone who is invested in justice for Karen and for John. Nevertheless, we'll persist. We'll keep showing up because it's the right thing to do. And this is my promise to you. I will give you my best effort. My New Year's resolution was to give my family the best of myself and not what's left of myself. And you are my internet family. I strive to be accurate, to put in the hard work and do the research. I try to be impeccable with my word and not speak impulsively or prematurely, but I'm not infallible. My theories might be incorrect, but please know that I will never deliberately mislead you. Everything worth doing should be done with honor. I won't take shortcuts. I'm trying to fully learn all of these concepts, and I'm so lucky to have some outstanding tutors. Shout out to my Reddit friends for their hard work and infinite patience in explaining very complex things to me. Being so thorough takes time, so thank you for waiting for me. Hi guys, this is the second video in the series. The first one is really important for setting the foundation for this one, so please make sure that you've watched it first. It's not very long, maybe I think 16 minutes, but it's important to be familiar with those concepts in order for this one to make sense. It will be worth it. I know a lot of folks are concerned about the new Sallyport footage and how it may impact the key cycles. And I'm here to tell you the data that we are going to talk about today is already so fakakta that this new detail won't really impact the key cycle situation at all. There are so many ways to discredit this data. The new detail is just another wrecking ball. For those who contacted me about the Sallyport photo timestamps, I tested out the brightening technique that you were talking about on the timestamps from a different surveillance camera from what the pink nerd used on the hypothesis that they'd need to alter all the timestamps by 1 hour on the entire system to make them consistent. They meaning the Canton Police Department. You can decide if it did anything. The original is on top, and the brighter version timestamp is directly beneath it. Then, because I absolutely hate being lied to, which Yuri Buchanan did, he lied to our faces. I wanted to show you that the taillight in the tow truck video is red, and so are the side lights of the truck. And just to be sure, I boosted the saturation on the bottom photo, and look, it got even more red. Undeniably red, as crimson as the cheeks of the Commonwealth should be, with shame and embarrassment for the choices they've made. And you may have seen other recent perspectives about the Techstream data recently. I know the pink nerd on Twitter has one theory, and Aussie Insider has another, and mine is totally different from theirs. Whose is correct? We don't know. They're all theories. I'm a little skeptical of the ChatGPT theory only because the charts that it produced don't align with the ones that the raw data produced. But I don't have enough of an understanding of the math involved to really be able to explain it. I can tell you that they're different, but I don't understand what caused the difference. There might be a good reason for all we know. You'll see the throttle chart in this video. You'll see what I mean. And I'm not throwing shade at all toward anyone. Like I said, I'm only comfortable with making videos about stuff that I understand, and I don't fully understand those. I have thoughts and feelings and concerns about the conclusions that were drawn, but that is out of my wheelhouse. I'm not the right person to evaluate it. Remember, just like the quote that I shared with you many moons ago, believe nothing, no matter where you read it or who said it, no matter if I have said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. You get to decide what agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. Or you might see something entirely different and come up with a fourth theory. Ready? Let's get to it. My whole life, I thought that warming up the car was something that you did for the passengers. I didn't realize that it was also important for the car. It turns out that there's a mechanical reason that you should let your car run for at least 3 minutes before driving in freezing temperatures. I'm not going to overwhelm you with the technical flapdoodle of it all. It's okay if you don't know anything about cars. I don't know anything about cars. But having spent my childhood in New England, there is something I do know about, and you probably know about it too. My parents thought that children's Tylenol was just a marketing scam. So instead, they would divide an adult tablet in half, and then they'd crush that half between 2 spoons. And then came the good part. They would top off the Tylenol powder with a spoonful of pure maple syrup from the opaque jug that we kept in the fridge. Instant children's Tylenol, and no complaints from me. Cold maple syrup is better than warm maple syrup because I'm picturing you saying this at home to your screen to the video, because it's thicker. It is an absolute luxury to have a thick spoonful of real maple syrup straight from the fridge. So what does this have to do with cars? Well, the fuel and the different oils in the car behave a lot like maple syrup. When it's cold, they're thick. And when they're thick, they don't flow smoothly and easily through the car's lines to the engine. This creates two problems that would be visible in the vehicle control history. First of all, the engine's RPMs can run higher than normal. This is because the engine needs to work that much harder to pull that cold, thick fuel through the lines and the motor. The second problem is that the viscosity, the thickness, can cause a delay in the communication between the gas pedal and the throttle. If we accept Trooper Paul's spreadsheets at face value, then event A supposedly happened after the car had been running for 10 minutes and 57 seconds. And event B supposedly happened after the car had been running for 19 minutes and 2 seconds. The two events were approximately 8 minutes and 5 seconds apart. If we accept Trooper Paul's spreadsheets as truth, then there shouldn't be any signs of the engine being cold, right? The 2021 Lexus LX 570 normally idles between 600 and 800 RPMs. So if we look at those charts during the time when nobody is accelerating, no activity on the gas pedal, then that's what we'd expect to see. So I went to the charts and I counted. For event A, of the 13 points where the acceleration was 0, 8 of them were above 800 RPMs and 5 fell within range. For event B, of the 9 points when the acceleration was 0, 1 was above 800 RPMs and the other 8 were in range. If we're trying to make a hypothesis about the temperature just based on this data, it seems like event A might have happened before the car was fully warmed up if more than half the markers were outside of the range. Okay, well, the plebans of the world will find an excuse as to why my little experiment shouldn't count, why it's not scientific enough, and that's fine. I'm not an expert on the witness stand. I'm just making observations. But next, we're going to look at the relationship between the gas pedal and the throttle. The driver uses the gas pedal to communicate a message to the throttle. The throttle receives the message and it responds by giving the fuel and air combination to the engine. Remember, if the engine is warm, if the engine has been running for longer than 3 minutes, then the gas pedal and the throttle should be pretty much synchronized in an identifiable way. If those two indicators aren't synchronized, then it supports the idea that the engine hasn't fully warmed up yet. So let's look at the charts. You know from the previous video that for a chart to be an effective tool, it needs to be easy to read and easy to understand. In my experience, charts that are too abstract just confuse people. And I speak as someone who has been confused by many a chart. So when I created this chart, I flipped the graph upside down so that we could visualize what the driver's foot was doing to the gas pedal. As drivers, our interaction with the gas pedal is very situational. Someone who is drag racing at a track is going to press the pedal all the way to the floor as soon as the lights change. They want maximum speed immediately. They don't need to watch out for pedestrians because it's a controlled course. It's just go. So their acceleration chart would probably look like this, straight to the floor. Compare that to someone who is pulling out of a parking space at Stop and Shop. They need to navigate through the parking lot and be mindful of other cars and mindful of shoppers and of stray shopping carts. So their acceleration chart would probably look like this, Lots of little movements, nothing very extreme, very light on the pedal. Here's a chart for what it looks like when I leave my house to go to the store. We live on a hill, so I tap the gas to get out of the garage, and then I basically coast to the bottom of the driveway. Then I turn left onto the alley, and I have to drive slowly and carefully back there because you never know what you might encounter kids, toys, or, God forbid, any animals, to quote Lucky the plow driver. From the alley, I turn right onto our neighborhood street, but it's only about 150 feet to the main road. So, again, just a little tap. Now, as you can see, there's a blind spot to my right. So, when I'm trying to turn left onto the main road, I really need to commit because cars come speeding around that corner. Are you seeing how the chart works? Can you visualize the connection between the gas pedal angle and the chart? I hope so. So now let's look at event A and event B. We're actually going to look at B first because it's easier to interpret. So for the first 4 seconds, the driver isn't even touching the gas pedal. Then the driver puts it 20% down, and then they push harder, and then they push a tiny bit harder, and then they push it much harder, and now it's pressed more than 60% of the way down. So they keep it here, and they even lift their foot up a little before pushing it a little harder, then harder, and then even harder until it's 75% of the way to the floor. And that's kind of where it stays until the end of the event. Constant pressure holding it at 75%. Let's add in the throttle. Remember, the driver uses the gas pedal to tell the car to use more fuel, so more power, more speed. And the throttle responds to the message by giving fuel to the engine. And it looks like this. Now, both the gas pedal and the throttle are represented in percentages, so the maximum number would be 100%. So you'd expect to see them approximately paralleling each other, right? And, it wouldn't be instantaneous. There needs to be time between the two to relay the message. I get that. But we'd expect to see roughly the same shape, probably a half second later, maybe even a whole second. So, this turquoise shape, this is what we're expecting to see. But according to the data, this dark blue shape is what we have. I don't know enough about cars to say if this is normal. All I can do is describe what I'm observing. I can tell you that these two shapes are not the same. The throttle output is not directly paralleling the message from the gas pedal in a one-to-one kind of pairing. Additionally, the throttle measurement looks very sharp and angular, while the gas pedal looks a little bit more rounded and gradual. Here, let me show you without my turquoise expectation chart on top of it so that you can see just the green gas pedal and the blue throttle. Blue throttle it sounds like the name of an energy drink, doesn't it? So, what do you think? Could this mean that there was a delay or something that could be due to the fuel being cold and thick? Now let's look at event A. As soon as I show it to you, you'll understand why I needed to save it for second. So here's just the green gas pedal, and it's like, sheesh. We have a cautious tap and then a firm stomp to 30%, and then more, and then a bit more, and then foot off the pedal entirely. And then a few seconds later, we have a little pressure and then two medium stomps. And again, if we're expecting the throttle to parallel the gas pedal with a slight delay, then it would look like this with the turquoise shape. But instead, we have this. The dark blue is the throttle. And it's like, what the heck is going on with those blue blips before there's any input from the gas pedal? Was it residual from whatever happened prior to this that isn't visible on the chart? Because if so, well, that sure seems like a delay to me. But I don't know what this is supposed to look like. Without even truly knowing anything about cars, I feel like if the throttle is releasing fuel to the engine without receiving any directions from the gas pedal, that seems important. Put it this way, if you saw this chart without any context and realized that the dark blue was showing the throttle and it was giving fuel to the engine without being instructed to, and let's say this was your teenage child's car or the car that your grandbaby would be riding in, you would probably insist that a mechanic take a look, right? I mean, it looks kind of concerning. So, what do you think? Is this enough for you to wonder if those timestamps claiming that these events happened 11 minutes and 19 minutes into a key cycle had been fake? Don't worry, we're not even halfway through the video. I just want to pause to say thank you. Thank you so much for your continued love and support. You mean the world to me, and I'm sure that Karen feels the same way times 100 or even times 1,000, feeling that love and support from you. Could you please double check that you've liked the video and subscribed to the channel? You know how sometimes creators say, oh, YouTube unsubscribes people. Maybe I'm paranoid, but I used to think that it was just a sneaky way of getting people to subscribe until I saw it happen with my very own eyes right after I released the first Techstream video the other day. It just, clicked down -2 subscribers, like 2 dreamers gone, bloop, bloop, just like that. And I worried about them. Like, do they know they've been unsubscribed? Are they okay? Will they find their way back? I feel protective over you guys. You're my internet family. You know that even if I had 99 lambs, I would still search for the one that got lost. When that's in your heart, you can't just turn it off. It's as reflexive and as hardwired as a heartbeat. Every lamb deserves love. And then, shortly thereafter, YouTube sends me this notification that 48% of my viewers aren't subscribed. Gee, wonder how, right? Honestly, I think that YouTube doesn't promote my content because I refuse to do their shorts and their super chats and stickers and memberships. See all these things that they're trying to make me do? And they're trying to use peer pressure as if seeing that other people are doing it would somehow make me want to do it too. I'm not being sanctimonious. I'm not judging channels that participate in the money program. I just don't think that it's the path for me. It's just, well, to be honest, I think, I guess I'm fearful of money because in most of my experiences, money has been a tool of coercive control. Money, it causes fights between family members, it causes conflict between internet strangers. So I guess I think I'm scared of money, receiving money because it's been weaponized. think I'm I think I'm afraid of money. That sounds wild, but I think that's what it is. Boy, is my therapist gonna be proud of me when I tell her about this realization. I need to write it down so I don't forget. At least it's recorded here so that I'll remember to tell her. Now you see, if I edited, I would cut this confession out, but maybe someone needs to hear this. Maybe in some ways, we all have a complex relationship with money. And maybe that's why YouTube silences my content, or what's the word? Like muzzles or shadow bans my content. Maybe because I'm not profitable for them. But certain things are more important than profits, right? The things that matter most are too precious for price tags: justice, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, love, health. Anyway, I'm grateful for your support, and I'm sorry about the tangent. I've had a lot on my mind lately. Okay, so let's keep dismantling the dumpster fire known as the Commonwealth, shall we? Back to the delusion. Let's keep pretending that Trooper Paul's spreadsheets are real. According to Trooper Paul's testimony, on the chart that I have nicknamed the table of contents, everything from key cycle 1164 and beyond was Trooper Paul's testing experiments. So, okay, let's zoom in a little closer. forget Trooper Paul's testing error codes. Let's cover those up and look at just the top ones, everything above the black line. We've been told to believe that the 4 codes listed on the chart prior to Trooper Paul's testing were the result of Karen's driving. Key cycle 1082, the code is PCS Operation History, and key cycle 1111 is also PCS Operation History. And then we have our 2 events on key cycle 1162. Are we expected to believe that these are the only triggers during the lifetime of the car? Is that what the Commonwealth wants us to believe? That somehow the world's safest driver, no distracted driving, no jackrabbit braking, no bumping into trash cans at the end of the driveway, somehow lost her control and lost her cool, and 50% of the car's lifetime of trigger events happened on a single day, on a single key cycle? Does that seem weird to you? For those 2 top events, 1082 and 1111, I know what PCS is. I can tell you about that. It stands for Pre-Collision System, and it's a safety feature that alerts the driver when a collision is likely so that the car can automatically apply the brakes to prevent or reduce the impact of a front collision. My previous car had a malfunctioning pre-collision system, and the car was aggressively misinterpreting certain things as objects like potential collisions. Things like puddles of water and train tracks would activate the automatic brakes. So it would force me to hydroplane, which was concerning. But it was worse when it would sense train tracks as a potential object because it would slam on the brakes on the train tracks. And one time it pinned my car to the train tracks when a train was actually coming. The do not cross arms were coming down and the lights started flashing. And there I was in downtown Plano with this invisible force field holding the car in place. Like, I didn't even connect what was happening at first. I thought that the train tracks had somehow like magnetized or something because it was one of those light rail commuter trains. So, I mean, I was just holding down the gas pedal, praying that the car would move off of the train tracks and that I'd be able to scooch underneath the do not cross bars in time. And thankfully it did. But my word, it was scary. It was literally like a scene from a nightmare. I drove straight to the dealership and I said, "Fix this. I am not leaving until this gets fixed. We can't live like this." So PCS means a potential front collision. Like if a cat runs out in the street in front of you, or if you're pulling the car into the garage and you get too close to the lawnmower. My gosh. Back when we lived off of Fort Hood. Our 2-car garage was so small that I used to have to park diagonally in it. And the only way to close the garage door was if the headlight was literally touching the washing machine, because the washing machine was in the garage too. So I had to gently bump into our washing machine if I wanted to be sure that I could close the garage door. And now I'm wondering if it was triggering a pre-collision event each time. Can you imagine the vehicle control history? Ma'am, you've had 800 pre-collision events in the past 2 years. Gosh, anyone who saw my vehicle control history would think I was the most unsafe driver in the world. And I hate to be so suspicious, but it kind of makes you wonder if these events were cherry-picked to plant the idea of recklessness in case someone on the jury was familiar with PCS. They'd think, "Oh, 2 previous almost collisions. This must be a pattern of unsafe driving." It's as if everything else from the chart, potential like time to get your oil changed alerts and whatnot, were deleted, and only these ones were somehow left on display. Let me show you something else. According to this, Karen took possession of the car on March 12th of 2021. So she only had the car for 323 days before they seized it. And if we divide the total mileage by the total days, we get an average of around 39 miles per day of driving. Of course, we know that of those 323 days, it probably wasn't driven every day. I mean, they were in Aruba over New Year's, and there were probably other trips and at home days too, I'm sure. But that's how averages work. Some days are more, some days are none at all. Is 39 miles per day reasonable? Well, I checked the approximate distances for things like Karen's house to John's house, both houses to Bentley, both houses to Karen's parents' house, and all in all, it seemed reasonable. Using the average of 39 miles per day, that would mean that the 1082 event had happened approximately 26 days earlier, around January 3rd, and the 1111 event had happened 16 days earlier, around January 13th. So the Commonwealth wants us to believe that nothing happened for, say, 10 months. And then January rolls around and poof, we've got 4 alerts. Color me suspicious. To me, it seems like something was different on key cycle 1162. Maybe the weather conditions, or maybe the driver, or maybe both. So that got me wondering just how many snowy days had the Lexus experienced. So I checked the historical data, and in April of 2021, there was apparently a surprise late season nor'easter with periods of heavy snowfall, gusty winds, thunder snow, and near whiteout conditions. And that was from April 15th through the 17th, primarily for Western Massachusetts. But based on John's comments anticipating the January 29th blizzard, it's unlikely that the duo would have ventured out in the brand new vehicle. I mean, it would have only been like a month old at that point, even if the accumulation was only 1 to 4 inches in the greater Boston area. And that's like at the very, very most from what I read. This was the car that got the spot in the garage, not the one that would get exposed to sand and salt and other drivers. That winter, the snowfall accumulation began uneventfully, and as of Wednesday, January 6th, the greater Boston area had received less than an inch or less than a half inch of snow for the entire fall of 2021 into the new year of 2022 season, which turns out was nearly a foot below the usual average for that time. But then on January 7th, Boston received 11.2 inches of snow, less than an inch away from achieving the average annual snowfall, all on one Thursday night. And based on this, it seems like Karen likely had some experience driving her own car in slick weather. Yet two of those triggers, 50% of what happened prior to Trooper Paul's quote unquote testing, happened on the same key cycle, which supports the idea that perhaps it was someone who didn't know the car who was behind the wheel. The difference must be the driver, and it must be someone who's not used to driving it in order to trip the trigger twice. Are you ready for more? You know what's crazy? This isn't the video that I sat down to create. I had made a low-tech simulator of the Lexus and of events A and B, and that's what I had planned to show you when all this other stuff kind of took over. To create the simulator, I had to interact with these stupid spreadsheets so much. I had to look at them so closely that I started to notice little things that didn't make sense. For example, see this value here? 10.32 megapascals for brake pressure? That's weird. The full range is 0 through 12.192. The internet had a lot of opinions about what was considered normal, But there was no denying that 10.32 would be considered hard braking. So, why would a deceleration speed of 4.4 miles per hour down to 1.9 miles per hour require hard braking? Like, those are treadmill walking speeds. We're supposed to believe that somebody applied a half second of nearly 1,500 psi of pressure when the vehicle was traveling at a walking speed. Pressure is kind of tricky to visualize because a lot of things that are measured in psi, pounds per square inch, are things that we can't see, like the air in tires, which is supposed to be between 28 and 36 psi. So, to help visualize how much pressure the 1500 is, like how extreme it is, think about it this way. When you turn on your sink faucet at home, anything below 40 psi would be considered low pressure, and anything above 80 psi would be considered too high, and it could actually potentially damage the plumbing. The average human bite force is 162 psi. And remember, the number that we're like trying to find a point of reference for is 1,500. So nearly 10 times the average human bite force. Conversationally, a German Shepherd's bite force is between 238 and 291 pounds per square inch. But 1,500 psi corresponds to the pressure that you would expect at a depth of 3,460 feet underwater. Under fresh water, saltwater pressure is apparently calculated differently. So 3,460 feet, that's more than half a mile underwater. Think about the pressure against your ears if you were underwater that deeply. That's 1,500 psi. So 10.32 megapascals or 1,500 pounds per square inch. That was happening while the car was decelerating from a slow walking speed. Why? So I thought and I thought and I thought about it until I realized what might have happened. Can you think of a time when you put your foot on the brake harder than necessary? I can. I do it whenever I'm about to drive in reverse. My car was made in 2005, so it doesn't have a backup camera. I twist my body around and reach my right arm behind the passenger headrest to back up in our driveway, which, like I said earlier, is on a hill. And during these gymnastics, I always stomp on the brake out of habit. And if I'm driving my husband's car or my daughter's car, my daughter gives me a hard time about it, and she says, "Mom, you're gonna hurt your neck. Why don't you just look at the camera?" And I always explain that it's a habit. I've been doing it since I learned to drive. I do it without even thinking about it. I'm so used to manually checking because of, my own car not having a rear view camera that I forget that backup cameras even exist when I'm driving somebody else's car. So let's check and see what was happening when that mysterious hard braking happened. Sure enough, look at that. The hard braking happened exactly a half second before the car is put into reverse. I really think that's what happened. There's another factor that, this is another factor, I should say, that could support our theory that someone not Karen was driving the car. Someone who may not have been used to checking a backup camera, or at least this specific backup camera. When I was making the simulator, I had this. Well, okay, let me just show it to you. I'm going to show you event B because I'm really struggling with event A. For event A, the angles of the steering wheel, they're so deep. They're more than 360 degrees to the left and more than 360 degrees to the right. And it's very difficult to try to figure out how to visually represent that. Like it's much easier when the angles are smaller. So event B was far easier because the movements of the steering wheel are so teeny tiny. And remember from the previous video, the tire's movements are even smaller, 1/14th to 1/17th of what the steering wheel is doing because of the ratio that we had talked about in that previous video. So even if you take the very biggest number that we have here, it's still like just barely a degree of difference on the tires, but you'll be able to see as I play it through. Now, I know that Trooper Paul's stupid spreadsheets look overwhelming, but I bet I can explain it in a way that will make sense. Think of it like this. Pretend that we're going to illustrate a picture book. This chart contains our directions for what needs to happen on each page that we create. Every column of the chart will be one page in our book. So let's say that we're told to illustrate a story about seasons. If someone handed us a chart that looked like this, we could figure it out, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top telling us which page. And then we have sky, cloudy, blue, blue, gray, weather, rainy, sun, sun, snow, leaves, buds, green, colors, and bare, and ground, muddy, green, leaves, and snow. So using our chart and the illustrations that we'd create, we could make some inferences about which season was which and what the sequence is. So for event B, our little book is going to be 22 pages long, and each page is going to give us a little snapshot of information. When we assemble the pictures that we've created into a bit of a flip book, it will show us what was happening. We can even time it so that it's exactly aligned to what the stupid spreadsheet says. We can replicate the driver's experience to help determine the authenticity and decide for ourselves, is this reasonable? So, using the information from that spreadsheet, I created the dashboard, and it's low tech, it's basic, but that's okay. Let me give you the grand tour. So, our gauges across the top from left to right are the tachometer, the speedometer, and the elapsed time. The tachometer displays the RPMs or rotations per minute. RPMs measure the speed of the motor, and the speedometer measures the speed of the car. RPMs are what make the sound that you hear when the engine is on. You know that the idling sound that you hear when you first turn the car on, that's you're hearing the RPMs. Below that, we have a steering wheel, which will be turning to the degrees from the chart, and a windshield, and a horizon so that we can really observe the subtle changes. And over on the right side, we have a gear shifter. Along the very bottom of the screen, we have a brake pedal, which will be highlighted in a logical color when active, red for stop, and a gas pedal, which will be highlighted in green for go. I also put gauges with numbers so that you could see how hard the brakes and gas were being pressed. Okay, let me play this through. Oh, wrong one, Grace. Please be patient with me. Hold on. Sorry about that. I have Skady 8 tabs and files open here, and I had clicked on the wrong one initially, and you guys know I don't edit. We just save it for the blooper reel. So that's what we're going to do. But I've got the proper one in front of me now, and I'm going to click play, and we can see it. And I've got the Formula One lights starting. So that's it. It goes quickly, doesn't it? Here, let me play it again. And done. Okay. This time I'm going to play it in slow motion. So instead of a half second between events, I'm going to double it and make it a whole second. But there are two events, 4.5 and 4.7, which are going to be bumped up to a half second long. Okay. And right before I hit start, I just wanted to say the other thing to keep in mind as we're watching this, as you're watching the steering wheel, um, it's the tires are only doing 1/14th to 1/17th of the motion that you see the steering wheel doing. So the tires, remember, they're just turning an itty bitty bit. Okay. So um, watch closely on this next round, on this slow motion round, because there's going to be a one question quiz after you see this sequence. Okay. So here, let me touch the play button. All right, there we go. So, my question to you, remember how Adam Lawley supposedly directed the jurors to look toward the center console at the jury's visit to 34 Fairview? Oh, we're looking, Mr. Lally. We're looking. And I don't think you're going to like what we see. Because here is the quiz. How many times was the car in neutral? And the answer is once. The car started in drive, or I should say, like the little snapshot that we have of this alleged event started with the car in drive. And to get to reverse, it has to pass through neutral. Here, look at Karen's car. Look at what the gear shift looks like. It always has to pass through neutral. It's a safety feature, it's a law. Now, let's look at the stupid spreadsheet for event B. The orange line is the one that tells us about the transmission. See how this one box right here is clear? That's when the car was in neutral, just like what we saw. Okay, now on the other chart for event A, let's find the line for transmission. Here it is. It's the orange line, and it says that 1 represents forward and 2 represents reverse. So we have forward, 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 reverse. No neutral. How is that possible? Neutral is a safety feature. You have to pass through neutral so that you don't mess up the engine. Kind of weird, right? Let's keep going. Reverse, 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 forward. No neutral again. Twice in a matter of seconds, the system just didn't record something that happened. You can't get from forward to reverse without passing through neutral. So it did show neutral on the first chart we looked at, but it doesn't show it on the second chart. And I asked myself, okay, well, can someone shift so lightning fast that the system somehow misses it? Like faster than a half second, but also faster than a half second and not crossing over the moment that the system is taking that snapshot of what's going on. So let's say that it takes 4/10ths of a second to shift. Here's what would need to happen. And I know that this graphic is a little bit abstract, but out of all those options, the light blue ones are the only ones that could sneak past being recorded. And the idea of two of them in the same 10 seconds of recording seems statistically unlikely. Someone who is good at math can probably tell you just how unlikely. I can just tell you that it seems unlikely. Is it reasonable? I mean, it seems like a very small needle to thread, but I wondered if we could get any clues from the alarm.com security footage from the driveway of Karen's parents of the Lexus being loaded onto the tow truck. So I went through the testimony where that video footage was shown, and I tried to get a picture of each second of action based on the timestamp across the top. And sometimes I was able to get an extra timestamp in the same marked second. And if I did, I included it in our little flip book anyway, because this isn't scientific. And I felt like the more data points that we had, the more helpful this would be. So I loaded them up into Canva and I did my best to crop them, and it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it won't trigger any seizures. So that's a plus. And then I timed the slides so that they were 1 second apart. And during this 42-second series, there are several times that the car passes through neutral. I think I counted, like 5 separate times. And what's crazy is that this is such a tiny excerpt of the total video footage. We have 5 times going through neutral in just the 42 seconds of footage that we have. And there's all this other stuff that we don't have. Like, wouldn't we love to see when Proctor and Buchanan arrived? Did they pause to discuss the tail light? Would we see them pause to take a photo of it, perhaps? What about when the tow truck driver arrives? Would we see him, walking around the vehicle, documenting the condition? Would we see the driver enter the car and turn it on so that we knew if it had a chance to run for at least 3 minutes before it was driven? Wouldn't we love to see how many more attempts it will take for the driver to finally get the vehicle on the truck and secured? Wouldn't we like to see what time the truck drove away? Wouldn't we like to hear the engine to see if the RPMs sound like what we would expect from the chart? But the most important time of the video that we have is toward the end, because something unusual happens with the rear lights. There are safety regulations about the color and location of a car's lights. In the United States, when the car is in reverse, the rear lights need to be white or that kind of amber orangey yellow color. Remember when Trooper Buchanan pointed at Karen's lights and lied to our faces? That first time the light was red, and the second time the light was white. And that second time, the light was supposed to be white because the car was in reverse, because that's the law. As I looked at the photos and the series of photos, I noticed it looks like the main rear lights are white when the car is in neutral and when the car is in reverse. But the license plate lights are only on when the car is in reverse, not when it's in neutral. So this is how we can track how long the car is in neutral. We just need to count how many photos show the white lights, but no license plate. And it should be easy enough. So we can lay out the photos. And let me pull that up on the computer. Okay, so we're going to watch this one through. Like I said, it's about 42 seconds long. And don't worry if it goes too quickly for you, because earlier, either today or late last night, at some point, I uploaded this and the simulation. And also, I tried to experiment with the contrast a little bit to see if we could view the tire tracks from this. And out of all of the different settings that I tried, I felt like the tinted blue setting gave us the best chance of seeing what the tire tracks in the snow looked like. So I put those 3 videos on repeat on its own YouTube video without any commentary or anything, just so that if you want to, so that you can just like observe it and observe it and observe it because I'm telling you, like I clicked replay so many times after I got these series of photos lined up, and it became annoying to hit replay so many times, and I thought, "You know what? For them, I'm gonna like, let me put them all in a line on the YouTube video, and that way you don't have to keep clicking repeat, repeat, repeat to get a closer look at it." Okay, so we'll watch through this one, and then I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, okay? So here we go. So it's coming forward, and now it's going in reverse, and we're in a deep reverse here, and now it's going forward again, but look, it's too far off to the right, so then he has to back up again and adjust again, and now he's going forward, but if you keep your eye on the tires, by the time he gets halfway up on the ramp, now he's too far to the left. So now he's backing up again, and watch for the license plate lights. There they are. So now you know that he's in reverse and going back. But prior to that, all the other times that we were seeing the white lights, that was when the car was in neutral. That was more than a second. That may have been more than 2 seconds. So the idea that the car just magically would not log passing through neutral seems very odd to me. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it seems weird to me. So let me play it through again, and this time I'll fermer ma grande bouche. I'll be quiet and let you observe. Watch those lights. There we go. Okay. So, our answer seems to be no, it doesn't really seem reasonable that the system would randomly fail to record it and or that you could thread the needle twice in one little snippet of time and skip over it charting neutral. So, it's interesting. And while we're looking closely at the chart, see how the car is recording longitudinal Gs and lateral Gs, even when it's allegedly not in motion. And see how these G's are a negative number? I think that means, that the direction of the force is toward the back, like that the center of gravity for the vehicle would be pushed further back, kind of like gravity might do if the car was paused at a steep angle. So, even if someone wanted to give the Commonwealth the benefit of the doubt, it seems like the walls are closing in. What's the threshold for coincidences? I think the Commonwealth has used up more than their share. In this video alone, we have established these things. Signs point to a cold start. Signs point to a different driver being behind the wheel. Signs point to potentially missing data, like the neutral that should have been recorded. The longitudinal Gs when the car is not in motion indicate something was going on with the weight distribution, and that's a heavy vehicle. And then just generally speaking, signs point to something not authentic about these spreadsheets. So, what do you think? Was this just, some of those crazy Canton electronics? Or do you believe that somebody tampered with it? And if someone did, who do you think it was? Please stay tuned because, like I said, this wasn't the video that I had planned to make. I had other stuff to share, but all this other corruption got in the way. Ah, oh my gosh, I feel like truer words have never been spoken. A pattern of corruption interrupted by brief periods of more corruption. 'Tis the Norfolk County way. Just stunning. So until the next one, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of our community. I love you.